Welcome to another edition of the GreenBaje podcast. Usually, I would say that next to me on that side is Mr. Ajay Williams, but today we have a brand new Greens in the place, Mr. Hatuey Campbell of the Collective Bargaining podcast. AJ is currently enjoying the celebrations of his birthday that was last week, and he was not able to join us this week. So, Mr. Campbell has so graciously agreed to join us and take his place today. How are you doing, Hatuey?
Hey, thank you very much, man. It's an honor to be on the podcast. We've had you on our podcast called the Collective Bargaining Podcast, but in the back of my mind while we had you on that show, I was like, you know what, I gotta get on that podcast one way or another.
For sure.
I was this close to begging my co-host, so I just want to point that out. But it's an honor to be here. And it's kind of sad but at the same time, happy birthday to the co-host who can't be here today with us. But again, thankful to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. We are very happy that you could join us this week. And don't worry, this will not be the last time you're here. We have to make sure that you are here when AJ is here so that, we can go too wide on the green side and I'll just hold it down on the beige side. And it'll all be good.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to that. The only downside to that is that sometimes we Bears fans can become punching bags. Because of our team, when you have no protection of of your quarterback, then you become easy pickings for other fans. So
it is true.
It's one of those things. But yeah, thankful to be here, man.
Of course. No, as you said, as a Bears fan. And you had mentioned to me before that you're living in Chicago. So
yes, I
do
am.
you back all of the Chicago teams?
It's interesting, right? It's a strange dynamic, but I firmly believe that you have to be a supporter of things in your region, in your city. You have to, you're pulled to that. So when I came to Chicago, let's put it this way. I used to live outside in another city, but in the state for 8 years. Then when I finally moved to Chicago, at the time I was supporting none of the teams in the city, to be clear. I didn't like the Bears. I was a Patriots fan. I didn't like the Chicago Bulls. I was a LeBron fan pretty much. And, and in terms of, I wouldn't even look at the soccer or football, depending on where you are in the world. I wouldn't look at those teams, the Chicago Fire that we have here. As of today, because of me firmly believing in those things, of supporting your local teams, I am a Chicago Bulls fan. I am a Chicago Bears fan, and I am a season's ticket holder for the Chicago Fire. So, and
wow.
I'm at every game. So, so it's me because I love the city. I love the flag. I love the people. It was my reason for moving here, right? Because you can immerse yourself in everything, the culture. It was just so much, while I like my friends in New York, I'm just not a fan of New York teams. And to me, it's too much like, of seeing people from home. We always say that, right? When you're in New York, you feel like, man, you're in the Caribbean, Yeah. So for me, and I know it's much larger than that, but yeah. So for me, Chicago is where it's at. And I embrace that and all the teams that come with it. There's some pain with that, but,
of course.
Definitely, we take that. We take it, Yeah. So definitely a supporter of the Bears, and all the teams.
Okay. Well, I mean, the way how you put it, I guess it's only a matter of time before I find myself rooting for the Broncos, but that may be a while yet because I was very much entrenched in my Saints fandom when I moved here. So it's a little difficult now for me to move off of that. But
right.
we can never say never, especially when we're looking at all of the craziness that's been happening in this offseason. Now, it's been insane. A little quieter over your end. I haven't really heard much about the Bears this offseason, but I know for sure it must feel good that you guys are not chasing a quarterback for once.
Yeah. It feels good, is what I would say. we finally feel like we have a talented quarterback, and that goes a long way in saying, because we've really, uh, have dealt with a lot of pain over the past few years. It goes beyond years. It goes almost, when you look now, you could say it's a decade worth of, I would say, quarterbacks that have really been second string, that have been paid maximum dollars. And, I think sometimes the fans in Chicago see a guy talk up all the talk, embrace the culture, and they feel like this is the one. It's a large, let me put it this way. Chicago is the largest of all the bigger markets with the least expectation. You go to LA, and as a star, you enter the LA market. You're only as good as your last game. You go to New York, even though New York is not necessarily a winning culture, over there for some of the teams that they have, other than the Yankees. You're only as good as your last game. You look at the Knicks, etc. You look at the Jets, etc. How they treat their quarterbacks, and others, right? You're only as good as your last game. There's a high level of expectation that comes with, the teams and the fans that are there. And Chicago, across a lot of the sports teams, I cannot explain it, but the expectations, especially with some of these quarterbacks over the last few years, that have, from the eye test that that's not the one, and the fans will stick. Now, that could be a good thing, because the fans do stick by them. Once a selection is made, they'll boo them in the draft. They'll boo them when the trade is made, right? But after that, once the game time comes, they'll embrace them. And that's a gift and a curse at the same time, because it means that once you have a bad selection, you're stuck with that selection for a lot of years to come. Chicago is the same team that passed on many legendary quarterbacks you see today.
Yep.
Kansas City. I'm just pointing that out. So I'm not going to call his name, because every time I call his name, it brings pain to my ears, to my mind. They skipped on him in the draft. I will never recover from that. I'm sorry to say. But anyways, I feel like with Justin, we have a player to build around, someone that has potential. How much potential? I think he can be a top 5 quarterback.
Wow.
In the league. I say potential. I want to really taper my reaction here and make sure that, I'm very careful, because I don't want to come back on the show later on and be held to it too much here. I don't think he can be the top quarterback in the league, especially with the talent currently that we have in the league. But I think his potential and his age, given that, I think there's a possibility, and Chicago has made some moves. They've really stepped up. They've signed a wide receiver in Pringle. They've signed 2 wide receivers, as you know. They've signed St. Brown and Pringle. I think what they're going to be doing, though, is, because, as you know, they have to work on their offensive line. That's been the main cornerstone of all the issues surrounding our quarterbacks. Even when we had Khalil right here in our team and everyone was excited, there were problems on the offensive side, and that is a major hindrance right now in a squad. Now, you'll notice that Chicago hasn't really made much signings, if you look at it, and not many long-term signings. A lot of one-year deals, like Carson, defensive back. You'll see Morrow as well, who's been signed. So really just a lot of short-term deals. I think the longest deal outside of Pringles was Lucas Patrick. Okay. And I think that's, really it from there. I think what Chicago is going to be doing, because remember, going into the season, into the off season, you have really roughly, and what's different about this compared to other sports like we do with the NBA, whereas you have really one round of a blitz of trades going in, and then you have really guys who are not signed in the league coming on and signing short-term deals. You have really three waves here with football, right? And you can still, even though despite not making an early deal, I think there's your draft, but you also have two other waves of deals that you can start signing that can really help your team. So I'm not panicking yet. I still think that there's room for improvement in those signings. I think they're going to go to the draft to really work on the line, that offensive line, because that's really where we need some work. I think they're not going to sign any more players for their really the wide receiver area. But I think what you're going to really see is more the offensive line. I think they're going to go to young talent in the draft. I think we don't have any first round picks, but I think they're going to have second round picks that they can work with. And I think that's where they're going to start targeting guys that can really protect the quarterback. That's going to be key. Now, if we don't see that, and if we don't see any follow-ups here in the second and third waves here coming into the offseason, I think what you're going to start seeing is a panic. But I firmly believe in our new GM. I think Ryan Poles has talent. I think we believe in him from what we had to go through. I think you listen to the statements, and I'm a guy, I'll be honest with you. And me coming in from the Collective Bargaining podcast, what I want to say is shut me down if you want to move on to the next topic, because I will keep talking about these Bears. Okay. So you look at the new coach, right? That replaced Matt Nagy. Okay. Thank goodness. Matt Eberflus is a guy that has come out. He's more defensive minded, right? Now, Matt Nagy was known for calling defensive plays, even though that wasn't his forte. And it always works out in some of the most terrible ways that you could ever imagine a team playing when you really needed critical plays to pull your team forward in close matches. How Matt has distanced himself from Nagy, and it's ironic that both of them are called Matt. That's why I'm backing away from using the name. But he said he won't be calling actually defensive plays throughout the season. He will leave it to his coordinator to really run those plays. And I think that's really a resounding, positive coming from the coaching staff, that you are going to let your delegated staff and specialists run the team as it should be. It's the most effective and efficient way. The greatest coaches in football, that's the way they've run it. It's down to a science at this point. It's a mature game, and it's positive to see that, hear that. Chicago needs to get back to system level football, to where you can just plug and play players and you still perform great. That's what I love to see in sports. I love the star that can carry. That's always a Cinderella story. But in football, it's so much people on the roster. You can't pull things off that way. You have to build a system that works. And I think now that we have a coach that's coming in that has openly said, guys, yes, I'm a defensive-minded specialist, but I am not going to intervene. I'm going to take part and delegate this job to the specialists that are here to run the show. And, we have Gretzky, I think, on offense, who's going to be running the offense for us. I think if you let him do his job, I think we can really pull games together. I do not want to see Aaron Rodgers at Soldier Field, a field that I'm at almost every other week, saying, this is my house. People don't understand how deeply that cuts fans. Okay, when I watch that on TV, I'm like, are these players serious? Is he serious? Like that? If this was football/soccer, a fan would have run onto the field and probably knocked him over. You know what I mean? Because he's on national TV in Chicago at Soldier Field saying, this is my house.
Yeah, I own you. I own you my entire career.
I own you. It's madness. And I do not want to see that this season at all.
Well, we should see. We should definitely see what happens. A lot more needs to be done during the rest of this offseason so that, good times can return to the Windy City. Only time will tell. But that you've given us a great insight into what's happening in Chicago and the
Yeah.
Bears, and I
Yeah.
definitely do appreciate that for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
So
Yep.
now, the biggest news over this past week has been the trade of Deshaun Watson from the Houston Texans to the Cleveland Browns. The news of
Wow.
this trade went from Cleveland, New Orleans, Carolina, and Atlanta were all in, to Cleveland was out, then Carolina was out, and it was down to NOLA and Atlanta.
Yeah.
Only then for Cleveland to suddenly be back in and winning the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. Now, this trade package is astronomical. Three
Yeah.
first-round picks over the next 3 seasons, a 2022 fourth-round pick, a 2023 third-round pick, and a 2024 fourth-round pick in exchange for Watson and a 2024 sixth-round pick. Now, while there is one clear loser in this deal, which is Baker
Yeah.
Mayfield,
Yeah.
both teams can feel like winners, and Deshaun definitely won with a fully guaranteed $230 million contract over 5 years. Now, there's a lot to unpack in this situation, not least of all the looming suspension that Deshaun is expected to get whenever the NFL decides to adjudicate on his 22 civil cases that are still pending. So
Yeah.
when you look at this entire trade and situation, what do you make of it?
And this goes layers deep, because at what I want to say is that if indeed so he's avoided criminal charges, but it's key to note that he still has civil lawsuits in place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of them. It's 22.
Yep.
That's no slouch. Now, I don't even know at this point, there's still a lot of, I think there's still a lot of backlash happening in Cleveland as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
Because despite a lot of players speaking out against Baker Mayfield, and that's why I said, let's discuss this in layers, because it is huge from a package standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
from a fan standpoint, from a player standpoint as well. So I'm going to discuss from a player standpoint first.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest loser, you said it was Baker Mayfield.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of players have complained that he is just not an elite quarterback, and we've seen signs of that. We've seen evidence of that from his teammates who are no longer with him, right? Video packages from former players there, and
our fathers.
And I think it's clear that he's not the future. And what we've heard from the news is that he's put in a trade request. He's written to the fans. He has, in a way, he has a right to feel disgusted with the situation, because this is a massive risk by a team that has you starting, that has put their faith in you over the past few seasons. And, I think that it's in a way, from a player's standpoint, I get a sense that if he was not privy to this at all, if this came as a surprise, I can share some understanding regardless of his performances. But at the same time, I'm going to move to the fan perspective, where I would say that I agree. If I'm the Cleveland Browns and I have a guy on the table, I keep Baker Mayfield in the mix, because they've declined his trade request, by the way. And I keep him on the table, and I roll the dice on Deshaun Watson. Yes, 22 civil lawsuits, but I still keep Mayfield in the mix, right? Because he's still, as of right now, because we don't know where he stands, Mayfield is still the starting quarterback, right? We know he's going to be suspended. We just don't know for how long. We don't know what the consequences of those civil lawsuits are. Now, in civil lawsuits, I believe usually the outcome is more monetary than it is prison time, so to speak.
Well, there is no prison time in the civil.
Right.
If the grand jury had indicted him, then he would have been looking at jail.
Then it would be looking at that. So we're looking at more monetary circumstances, right? And another thing too is Cleveland is a very, I want to say, conservative, has a conservative base. Let's put it that way. And there is understandable. I want to be careful here because this is a very sensitive topic for many people.
Yes.
And it is a very sensitive topic. So you can understand many people, even from outside of the state, supporters, not even of the team, and groups coming together to make it very hard marketing wise for that team to get off the ground now that they've made the trade. But the trade is over and done with. They've made their intentions and they want to make him their quarterback. And from a performance standpoint, as a fan, you know, behind that outrage, some of the fans that look at just the plays on the field are super excited because they know what this guy can do. And what we want to see from Deshaun is, if he is, let's say he is guilty from a civil standpoint, I think he needs to go on an apology and reform campaign while he obliterates the competition if he's allowed to play. He's going to have to do that, you know. So I would like to see him play. I would like to see him play. As I said, you're better to, you know, and let me put it this way. To me, you're better in the process of reforming yourself to be free, to be doing what you're best at, and to be helping others, and to be locked behind closed doors, and to be suffering, especially with the platform that you have. Now, I say that carefully. Some people, deserve to be behind closed bars, you know, but others, depending on what it is, the circumstances, and if you're found not guilty on criminal charges, I believe use your platform in the right way to influence others to do the right thing, you know, and work towards common goals. And I think Cleveland did the right thing. I see if he performs at the level that he did for Houston in Cleveland, and he is able to do it at the highest level, after this year, you're not going to be hearing complaints from Cleveland fans.
Yeah,
They're
that's
going
for
to be
sure.
rejoicing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, when I look at this situation, there are a few things that did come to mind. You touched on a couple of them.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that is interesting to note, but it is not surprising. It's not surprising to me, and I'm pretty sure everyone who has heard this or has not heard it will hear it now for the first time, that
Right.
none of the teams, so the Browns, the Falcons, the Panthers, even my Saints, none of them contacted the attorney who was responsible for these lawsuits, or any of the women involved, to talk about what happened to get their side of the story. Because when we're talking about football teams and football players, quarterbacks are a scarcity,
Yeah.
and any team is going to do whatever they can to get a new quarterback, to
Yeah,
put
they
themselves in
will.
the position to make themselves better and hopefully be in position to win a trophy.
Yeah.
The fans know this as well. And there are some notable people, fans, that have come out and said that, well, basically, they're no longer fans of the Cleveland Browns because they have
Yeah.
traded for Deshaun. Now,
Yeah.
at this time, we know that the grand jury has declined to prosecute him on any of these counts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no, the civil cases have to come up, and whereas the criminal goes beyond the shadow of reasonable doubt, civil cases go according to the preponderance of evidence.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Deshaun has been very vocal and in proclaiming his innocence from the beginning. We still don't know. So even the fans that are upset that the Browns have gotten him or have
I think they
traded for
need
him,
to. Yeah, I agree. I agree with
yeah,
that point.
they don't know. So until all the facts come out, all of us are still just going to be waiting to hear and see what happens. But as you said, your point is well made, that they will probably protest Deshaun for the first 6 or 8 games that
Oh
he
yeah. Oh
plays.
yeah. Oh yeah.
But after those, if they go 6-0 or 8-0 in the games that he's played well. I mean, they've brought in Amari Cooper, and
Yep.
they still have a very good run game. They've
They
done a lot with that team to build it up to the point where it was pretty much a quarterback away.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson is able to take them all the way to winning the Lombardi Trophy, they are not going to be protesting when they're having the
They're not.
parade. So
They're not. Yeah.
is a difficult situation. It's a very delicate situation, and there are lots of moving parts.
Yeah.
We can only just wait and see
Yeah.
how all of this goes.
If he wins a civil case, I think, you cannot be out there protesting, anything at all, because if a guy wins his civil case, if he's proven innocent in any criminal charges, then I think you have to leave it alone. I think
Yeah.
you have to respect that.
Yeah, you just let it go.
Yeah.
No, I
I
mean,
agree. I
there
agree.
are those that are still saying that, when we look at cases of this nature, and a lot of times things don't go according to how they're supposed to go. Like,
Right.
people could be guilty, but
Right.
because of the evidence, they still get off. That is another conversation for the legal experts to handle.
Exactly.
That is
Exactly.
not for us on our little sports podcast.
I
So
agree. I agree.
I think we can leave Deshaun and the Browns there for now. And
Yeah.
as we get more information, then we'll definitely bring them back up again. Now,
Absolutely.
we're going to play a brand new game based on all of the activity that we've seen this offseason. We're going to pick and choose a few spots, because if we try to do all of them, we'll be here all day. So we're asking if these moves that they've made make them a contender or a pretender.
Right.
Now, this is another edition of the way too early predictions. But before the draft, before training camp,
Right.
and after teams have spent big in some cases, we take
Oh,
a
yeah.
look
Oh, yeah.
at them
Absolutely.
specifically, and then we think of if these moves shift the needle for any of them as contenders for the division, the conference, or the Super Bowl, or if they will just fall by the wayside. So first up is Mr. Tom Brady, who seemed to have given up football for Lent, as he was literally gone 40 days and 40 nights before announcing he was returning to play once again for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, citing unfinished business. We don't yet know what Rob Gronkowski is going to do, as at the time of this taping, he's still a free agent. But Leonard Fournette is back. So, Tampa Bay, contender or pretender?
I'm going to go with definitely contender. And again, that's going to come back to the guys re-signing to the team. You have to recognize that Tampa was going into a gray area where you couldn't really tell what the team was going to be. You had guys like Gronk, you had guys that Perriman and all these other guys that you weren't really sure about that would actually come back to the team. But now you're hearing about a lot of guys, no question at all. Tom's calling them and actually, working things out, making sure that he can get the same squad back out there on the field. And I think that immediately makes them contenders again. It's not, I think it's behind the scenes is what the after effect, the ripple effect, that he really creates by re-signing, it keeps really the core of the team together, and that allows the team to go out and grab these star-studded free agents that are willing to sign for less, just to win a ring effectively. So I think they're contenders, but I think what will put them over the top, as I said before, is that second wave, third wave of free agency, where I think they can probably snipe some of those high regarded players that are willing to take a 1-year deal and really just be part of a winning team. So but definitely contender.
Yeah, no, I'd lose all credibility if I didn't say that the Tampa Bay Bucks are contenders again. No, they're my division, so that doesn't really give me any joy in saying.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can't allow myself to be such a homer that I would come and say they're pretenders. But we have to say contenders for what?
Absolutely.
So they're going to start the season as the odd makers favorite to repeat as the champs in the NFC South. That's a given. They have the most stability of the entire division.
Yep.
And as you said, there is the Brady effect, because players are going to want to come and play
I think so.
with Brady.
Definitely. I think that's what you're going to be looking at ultimately.
Correct.
So I think they're going to be right back in the mix. And I think you look at the games they tend to lose. I mean, it's really nail-biting affairs where it comes down to a play or two that, just really that team is going to be playing at a very high level. So to say, as you said, to say that they're pretenders would really subtract from our credibility, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
No, that's good.
no. The thing is, though, they still do have some weaknesses, and they have some stuff that they
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
address. Their
Yeah.
secondary was banged up for the majority of the season, and
Yep.
their offensive line, they've just lost one. I don't remember what position he plays, but he retired. So they have some work to do to rebuild
Yep.
those areas. And I will say, honestly, they do have a shot to come out of the NFC altogether, but there is no, as much as I said that they are contenders, there is
Yeah.
no way Ken the Saints fan is putting them in the Super Bowl, let alone winning it in March. No way, no how. So contender, Tampa Bay, but as I always say, hopefully if they do make it, if they do win the division, they get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs.
That's
No,
Tampa. That's Tampa we're
yeah,
talking about here.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Wow.
I want them.
Wow.
I want them out as early as possible.
Wow. 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 Wow.
Somebody from my division has to make it to the playoffs, and if it's not me, and it's going to be them, they could come back home on wild card weekend. I don't mind that.
So again, we're talking about new contracts for Chris Goodwin, Carlton Davis, Ryan Jensen, Leonard Fournette. You know, all of these guys are coming back. You know, they even filled a need at guard, right, by trading for Shaq Mason. So I mean, for me, I'm just saying, they've been working, right? They've been, even the wideout. They signed a new guy by the name of Russell Gage, right? So I mean, for me, this all happened. It all cascaded after Brady signed his signature. Everything I just called out, right? So, and remember, he's a legit replacement for Antonio Brown. So for me, I just don't see that first round exit happening.
We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
Last year they made a whole lot of, there was a whole lot of talk about them returning pretty much, well, the entire starting units of both the offense and the defense from the Super Bowl. And then players started dropping on their face. I said from the beginning that I didn't think that them returning all of these players would have made that great of a difference, because there's always attrition in an NFL season. Players always get hurt. And then they got knocked out. Well, it wasn't wild card weekend. They got knocked out on divisional weekend by the then champions, the Los Angeles Rams. Good for them. But that's just my personal wish, that if they have to get to the playoffs, that they get knocked out as early as possible.
You know, I see it when you say it, but I don't see the conviction, you know, when you say it, right? I see it, but I could tell you, you know, it's a wish, you know, but you know, it's really a deep wish that you're shooting for the stars at this point.
Well, we'll see. We have to wait and see how the rest of the playoffs shape up, because matchups are what makes the difference.
You're right. Absolutely. Especially in the NFL. Especially in the NFL.
No, from a quarterback to a wide receiver who Ajay and others consider to be, if not the absolute best wideout in football, one of the best, and that is Davante Adams. After it was confirmed that Aaron Rodgers was returning to the Green Bay Packers with a new 3-year deal in tow, the bombshell dropped. Adams was on the move to the Las Vegas Raiders, reuniting with his old college roommate and quarterback Derek Carr, and earning the largest contract for a wide receiver in the league. 5 years, $140 million, $65.6 million guaranteed, with a $19,250,000 signing bonus. Interestingly, in this situation, the Packers matched the deal for Davante, but he basically said, "Nah, I'm good," and left Aaron Rodgers and the Packers for pastures new. All right, so first, we look at the Packers, who got back a first and a second round pick in this year's draft. Packers, contender or pretender?
This is a tough one.
Yeah, this is your division, though.
This is a tough one. I'm you know what? That is such a huge loss. I would say pretenders this season. I'd say pretenders, but it may be some bias in there. But, you know, I say that because you're looking at a guy that, how many yards did he have this season? 1,500 yards. If I'm correct here. He he probably had second most touchdowns in his career this year. So I mean, it's really hard to put in words the loss that they just suffered. Now, he may have a good reason for leaving, and multiple reasons, right? You could say one, the weather, because you're signing for more money, you're moving to Los Angeles, effectively.
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, sorry. Las Vegas, sorry. You're going to a town that has, basically a lifestyle in itself. It's branded on the lifestyle, and you're leaving a place that really is I mean, in the middle of nowhere, right? GreenBaje. It's not the largest market. It's a well-respected team with a well-respected legend of a quarterback, one of the best to play the game. But I think ultimately there was just too much, with that team. You look at what was going on with Rodgers over the past 2 seasons, really, and beyond that. Him finally signing that $151 million contract, and coming back. I don't think that was enough. I just think that he saw really a way to compete, stay competitive, and go to a market that's really developing, fresh, but established in terms of its culture. And I think I would agree with his move. I think it was a good move. I think it was a move that's going to build on what he's done so far, and you look at that trade. I mean, not trade, but you look at him leaving and his numbers, especially, right? It's trending in the direction of him beating those stats that he set last year. It just depends on, can his quarterback produce? Can his offense produce for him with the plays needed for him to generate that type of offense? And I think my expectations for him is that he's going to blow it out of the park. I think he's going to have that stability, that confidence. And I think you're looking at maybe anywhere from 13 to maybe 1,600 yards, I think. I think you're looking at just as many touchdowns. I think you're looking at maybe less on the touchdowns, because now you're not sure on if, I mean, not everybody's Aaron Rodgers, right? Not everybody can generate that level of offense. So I think you're going to be looking at maybe the same amount of yardage, but I think you're going to be looking at maybe a little bit less in terms of the touchdowns. But, it's a brilliant take. I think I don't think the GreenBaje is going to be a contender per se. I just don't see that.
So what about Vegas then? Do you think the Vegas Raiders are going to be contenders or pretenders?
I think definitely he elevates them to a level, right? I think the problem is it's a stacked AFC conference, man. You're asking some loaded questions here, man. You're asking some loaded questions. Yeah, the AFC West is completely loaded, and I think I'm gonna have to go with contender. I think contender, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think contender. So I think you have to give it to them. I think the only team that I think here's why I say this, right? Here's why I say this. And there's a lot to unpack here. Again, these are questions that you have to layer out, right? I think the Chargers are going to have a mental lapse, I think, going into this season. I don't think you see the same team. I think the team that they're going to have to be competing with from the very get-go, I think, is going to be the Chiefs. The Broncos, while they're assembling a team that you can respect, I don't think they are going to be in the top 2 in the AFC West. I'm going to make that prediction. So I think it's going to be down to the Raiders versus the Chiefs. And, for me, it's a difficult question, right? Because we're splitting hairs here. But I think ultimately, I think really you're going to be looking at a 2-horse race here in that conference. Okay. That's my take on that. So I think definitely I'm going to go with contenders.
Okay. All right. So I'll cycle back and then I'll
Yeah,
come forward.
yeah,
So
sure.
for the Packers, I've noted that the Packers are always a contender in their division. Your division really and truly is not very strong.
Yeah.
To put
No,
it mildly, your division is not very strong.
it's horrible at the moment. It's
Yes.
just horrible at the moment. Yeah,
But the thing about the Packers is that, and Justin of hashtag this just in, he might not like this one very much, but honestly, we really can't consider the Packers to be seriously contending in the wider NFC. They've been proven to be pretenders more so than anything else.
yeah.
They've been to the
I don't
Super
see that.
Bowl
Yeah,
just one time with
yeah,
the bad man that is Aaron Rodgers, and they just
yeah,
traded away their best receiver for picks that they have habitually not used to
yeah.
upgrade Rodgers' offensive weaponry. Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, Malik Taylor,
Hmm.
Amari Rodgers. They aren't going to get it done over the course of a 17 game season. And A Rod has shown his reticence to trust rookie receivers. At this point, I think it's safe to say that the Packers are still the class of the NFC North, but the distance between them and the powerhouses of the conference just got wider, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So then Vegas.
yeah,
No, for me, and this might surprise you, but at this point, I really can't put Vegas as anything but a pretender. They
yeah,
have a new head coach, a new key piece in the offense,
yeah,
and they are in the toughest division in all of football.
yeah. They are. They are.
So they haven't shown us anything yet. So how then do we elevate them all the way up to being contenders? And I personally believe that of the four teams that are in the AFC West,
Yeah,
the Raiders have the fourth best quarterback of the four. And while between them and the Chargers, you may be able to quibble about whose roster is not as good as the other. I honestly see the Raiders in on the 22nd of March as we're recording this. I see the Raiders possibly being the fourth team in the division. Now, you made mention of the Denver
wow.
Broncos,
Yeah,
who they also went out and they made a big move themselves.
yeah.
They
They made a
got
big
Russell
move.
Wilson
Yeah,
to in a trade with the Seahawks. And they gave up Noah Fant, Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, as well as a boatload of picks.
yep.
Now, we know that the Seahawks aren't contending for anything but a top half pick in the next draft.
Correct.
So then is Denver. Now, you said that the Denver Broncos, you see them basically as pretenders because they're going to come below both the Chiefs and the Raiders. Now,
Yeah,
I also believe that the Broncos may be pretenders as well, but I'm more optimistic about them than I am of the Raiders. The
right.
Broncos are a much more complete team, and their
Yeah,
offense has more weapons,
yeah,
even if they lost their best tight end in the trade. But when you look at Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, Javonte Williams,
right.
those are an excellent core to build around. They're all young, they have great upside, and they are fantastic targets for Russell Wilson. Plus, the fact that he can run will also help to open up lanes for Javonte Williams to run coming this season. Now, the concern that you must have for Denver is their offensive line. And they don't have a lot of draft capital to address it because they just basically give away all of it to get Russell Wilson in the building. But their line is better than Seattle's was. And hopefully it should give Wilson enough time to work. But this division is a gauntlet. There are
Yeah.
four top
It's
quarterbacks, four very good pass rushing talents up and down that will give any offensive coordinator fits.
yeah,
I
yeah.
believe that the Broncos can make some noise, but before I can put them as contenders, they have to do it, especially in this division.
So where do you have them placing in their division ultimately?
I have the Broncos. I actually believe that the Broncos could come second in the division. I
Okay.
have the division going to Kansas City Chiefs because until someone knocks them off, you
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
take them off at number one.
Right.
The
Right.
Broncos have the potential to come second in division. The Chargers, they have a very good young quarterback who can make things happen going forward. So I put them third, and then the Raiders are fourth. But I mean, when you look at this division, somebody has to come fourth. And to come fourth in this division, you will not feel good about it, but you can't feel too bad
You can't
because
feel bad. You can't feel bad.
look at the
It's
competition around
stacked,
you.
stacked, stacked. No, you have to credit George Payton for what he did, right? You
Yes.
have to give him credit. If you're a fan of that team, you're not going to be upset by what's happening. Those picks that he gave up are well worth it. And I think Russell Wilson is the type of quarterback that you drop him in, he's mature enough to execute at the highest level right away. I don't think he's going to have issues there. So I wouldn't debate with you on you saying that they would be above the Raiders. I think there's enough evidence there to suggest that, it's a team readily made to perform. And given the QB that they acquired, I don't think there's going to be much of a settling in period. This is a mature level QB that's coming in with a lot of experience. It's not a hunch you're going on. He's proven. So
True.
I think with the talent around him, he's going to perform. I just in a way, the Raiders are like a wild card in my mind. And I just think that I couldn't debate. I just don't know. It's one of those things where I just think when I look at the layers, I think they have enough talent on that roster to really perform. But I wouldn't take a bet up to say that they would outperform the Broncos. I wouldn't take a bet on that. So that's a good point. That's a very good point that you made there. No, it's interesting, right? Because in reading up on the situation with Russell Wilson, he actually met with that team way back when they had Peyton Manning. So he actually worked out and got to speak with Peyton, etc. way back then. And then, of course, brought a lot of disappointment to the fans out there for the Broncos, right? We know how that worked out. But so it's come front and center. I think if it's any quarterback they could have picked up, he was the right one. And I'm telling you, it stings a bit because last year he was on the trading block. And I remember telling myself, Chicago, come on, throw the boat at this guy. This is what we need. And of course, it didn't come to fruition, but, man, to see him now go to another team, and if he does get to a point where he's in a Super Bowl, I mean, stuff like that is just painful to look at because he's another one that you just wonder about that, what could have been, but yeah,
Agreed.
no, definitely.
So now we head back to my division, the NFC South. And my team, actually, the New Orleans Saints, who have announced that Jameis Winston is returning as quarterback, not just for the 2022, but also the 2023 seasons. A 2-year pact with $28 million overall and $21 million guaranteed. Now, after trying and failing to get Deshaun Watson, we run it back with famous Jameis. So, contender or pretender?
It's another tough one. The reason I say tough is because I'm gonna say that they are I'm gonna say pretenders. I'm gonna say that this year you end up with maybe I say a 500, or you're either one game above or below 500. I think with the team currently assembled. It's key to note that this is a very early prediction.
Yes.
I thought what the team did was, in knowing that they weren't going to get Deshaun, I thought it was a smart play to re-sign him because you ended up with around, I think it's 30 million in cap space, right? And as a result, now you can actually go into that second wave we talked about and make some really good signings. That can change your season. That can build upon what you had last season, right? And I think last season you ended up just above 500, right?
Yeah,
so,
9-8.
Yeah, and you were still second in your conference, in your division. So, so at the end of the day, I still think there's room for you to be in the playoffs. There's still room, but the question is, when we say a team is a contender, that means it's not just about squeaking in. It's not just about falling in and playing one game and out. It's being a legit threat. I can't see that as currently constructed.
Okay.
I think they're going to have to add players within that second wave and try and build upon that. But it's impressive that they were able to open up a $30 million cap space, because that allows you to sign some really good talent. So now my question to you is, because I'm not aware, do you have any first round picks going into this draft?
Yes, we still have our first round pick. We're picking 18th overall.
18th, which is really good. So for me, that opens up a lot of options. You could even, I mean, even if it was the case that you didn't believe that Winston is really the way forward, right? You could still make a play at number 18, right? To where you sign a talent, or you can add to what you have. Now, my question to you is, what are your thoughts on re-signing Winston, though?
So I don't have a problem with re-signing Jameis.
Okay.
To the question, contender, pretender, I would love to say contender. My heart would want to go in the route of saying that the Saints would be a contender, but we do have a lot of question marks about the team going into the season. We have lost a few key performers on the defensive side of the ball, most notably Marcus Williams, who is now a Raven. And then Sean Payton retirement is a huge blow to the offense. But Jameis coming back gives us continuity, which we might not have had otherwise, because the majority of the coaching staff, except for Payton, is pretty much the same as years past. And Jameis, no, this is going to be his third season in this system, because he was the backup for Drew Brees in Drew's last season before he retired. Then he took over as the starter last season, and he was 5-2. So he was actually, making some things happen for us before he tore his ACL playing against the Buccaneers.
I have a question. Did you re-sign your left tackle?
No, it's not a left tackle, it's a right tackle, I think. That was
so it's Terran, right?
Armstead. Armstead. So he has gone to the Dolphins.
Wow.
But there was a lot of talk coming into the offseason that he was most likely going to be allowed to walk, because his play has been not what it has been in seasons past, and he's also had some injuries problems over the last 2 seasons. There was a lot of conversation that chances are we would have let him go and try to get somebody younger, definitely somebody cheaper, because we have worked our cap magic again, we don't have money to pay him and everybody else as well. So I'm not surprised that we let him go, honestly, because he's the second big loss that we've had. It was him and Marcus Williams. And of the two, the one I feel more significantly is the Marcus Williams loss, honestly.
Yeah. Wow. No, it's going to be interesting. So that money really has to work some magic for them going in to be considered contenders.
Yes.
No, that's interesting. That's interesting. I would say for now, I couldn't say contenders. I would say pretenders for now.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. The one thing that I continue to hold my hat on, and Ajay doesn't like it necessarily because that's his guy, but we swept the Buccaneers 2 seasons in a row. We beat them twice on their way to the Super Bowl. And we brought Brady's touchdown streak where we beat them 38-3 at them. And then this season, we shut them out. We beat them at 0. So if my defense can continue to perform at that level, we can make some noise in the South. But I don't really see at this point how the Saints are going to be good enough to make a deep playoff run. Like, we can probably, especially if we get like the 5th seed, if we're like the best of the rest, we'll probably play whoever wins the NFC East, because the East is always trash. So we'll probably play them. We could potentially beat the team that wins the East, but then who knows what happens past that.
It should be interesting. It should be interesting to see. And maybe, again, as you say, maybe matchups can work in your favor here. And, with the right signings, as I said, maybe you do become, over time, over the course of the season, you do become a contender. All the best. I know it can be a painful thing, man, but, good luck with the team.
Appreciate it. So now, lastly, Matt Ryan. He was traded to the Colts for a third-round pick. The Falcons are going to be worse than the Seahawks, so we won't waste time on them. But the Colts look like they were a quarterback away, and every year they're changing their quarterback. So
Yeah.
continuity at that position doesn't seem to matter too much to them. So are the Colts now contenders or pretenders now that they have Matty Ice under center?
Yeah. This is interesting. I think he makes them better because you're looking at a guy that has thrown 4,000 yards, 10 out of what, the last 11 or 12 seasons, I think. So somewhere around there. But and he did it without, he came close without Julio Jones and Ridley, right? To doing it again. And you know, I think he did it with like a rookie tight end in Kyle Pitts and a few other players that really you couldn't even name. So this is a guy, but how old is he at this point? That's another thing.
37.
Not everyone, he's 37. And I think ultimately you're asking a lot with this team to produce what's needed to actually be considered a contender. I'm gonna say you know, I'm gonna say pretender. I'm gonna say pretender. I think he wins some games. I think he puts on a show for the fans. I think he makes them competitive. But there's evidence to suggest that his game has slipped over the last few seasons. You know, and I think honestly, he's a good, you know, for what he is. What is he, right? He's a good pocket passer. He's gonna give you, you know, a lot of yardage. But I just don't see him carrying that team the way that people are expecting him to. I think not everybody's a Brady. Not everybody's that guy that you're going to bring in and immediately you're going to be in the Super Bowl. I think he's a wonderful talent. I think it's the right move, especially if you want to electrify your fan base. I would be excited too if he was coming to Chicago. But I just don't see that transpiring or translating into a Super Bowl win or a Super Bowl berth for that team. That's my take. I'm gonna say pretender.
So I almost feel like if you've been looking at my notes, because I have here that Matt Ryan is a better quarterback than Carson Wentz.
Yeah,
or at
yeah,
least
he is.
At least he used to be. Because this is still, I don't even know what year, but he's been around for a while.
Absolutely.
And he also, if we're being honest, he has not been considered to be in the upper echelon of quarterbacks now for a few years. I know he's going to a team. What works in his favor is that he's going to a team that he doesn't have to be great with to be successful.
No, exactly.
He has one of the best running backs in football.
Absolutely.
Top 10 defense. And a decent wide receiver room. You know, there was some conversation sometime back. You should have heard it, that, you know, they were asking, is Matt Ryan a Hall of Fame? Is he going to be in the Hall of Fame? No, it's on him. No, to showcase that he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Like some people think that he's, you know, on his way to be. And in the week, AFC South, they're contenders in the AFC South. But they're behind a few teams, quite a few teams in the AFC, if we're being honest, before they can be considered contenders to be in the AFC.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They're behind the entirety of the AFC West, in my opinion. They're behind the Bills. They're behind the Ravens and the Bengals. So that is now, what, 7, 8 teams? And then they still have the Titans to contend with. So they're like the 10th best team in the AFC at this point.
No, I would say you're absolutely correct on that assessment. I cannot call them a contender at this point. You just look at the team makeup. You have to respect what was done there. I think it's the right move, but I just can't. It's just matchups, and I just think when you look at that entire conference, as you pointed out, I just don't see them being high enough there to consider them a contender. It's just yeah, it wouldn't be the right call there, I think.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So that now completes all of my contender or pretenders. And we wanted to give you, no, Hatuey, an opportunity to bring one of the elements of the Collective Bargaining podcast to the GreenBaje podcast. Now, there's something that you guys do that I did with you on your show called the Blind Resume, where you just gave me a bunch of stats and told me to pick who I was eliminating as we went until we settled on the number one player from my perspective as who I would have picked based on their resume. So
Right.
now we wanted to give you an opportunity to bring that over to the GreenBaje folks as well.
Right. So definitely on the Collective Bargaining podcast, we look at, a lot of the sometimes legends of the game. We look at current players, and what we would do is we would put out, statistics out there on these players and what they've done without giving their names.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just an element that, it tests really to see what really fans look for. We know fans in our era look at statistics, but sometimes statistics can give you the wrong impression.
Statistics tell a lot of lies.
They say they tell a lot of lies. And ultimately, so I wanted to just bring a lighter version of this to your podcast and disclose some stats. I'm not going to call the players' names. These are going to be basketball players, of course.
Of course.
But, you're going to try to tell me which one of these you're actually going to select. Now, what I would give you a clue on is all of these are legends.
Okay.
Okay. So all of these are legends. And so with that said, I'll take it away. Now I'm going to change this up a bit so as to hide some of the stats here. Okay. So player A, all right, has 1,982 3-pointers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Has, in terms of his points, has 31,560 points on the board, has 11,489 rebounds, and 3,651 assists. Okay, let me know if you need me to repeat that. Okay, again, player A has 1,982 3-pointers. All right, he has, in terms of points, he has 31,560 points and has 11,489 rebounds. And assists, he has 3,651 assists. Okay. So we're going to give the points, 3-pointers, rebounds, and assists. Okay. Now, player number 2, or B, has, in terms of 3-pointers, has 22 3-pointers.
Okay.
Has 28,596 points, has 8,890 rebounds. All right. And 13,099 rebounds and 3,026 assists. All right. Okay. I'm going to give you player C. Now, player C has, in terms of 3-pointers, has 1,778 3-pointers. 581 3-pointers. Okay. To correct that. So I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
Has, in terms of points, his points total is 32,292 points, and rebounds has 6,672 rebounds, and assists 5,633 points. How would you rate these players? Process of elimination. Who would you get rid of first? player A, B, or C?
No, this is hard. So player A has the most 3-pointers of the lot of them.
Yeah.
Player B has the most rebounds. So I would assume that player B is a center.
Okay.
An old school center at that for 22 for only 22 3-pointers in his entire career. He can't be anybody in this modern era and have just those few number of 3-pointers.
Right. Right.
Ooh, boy. This is a tough one.
Yeah.
All right. So I think by process of elimination, I'm going to eliminate player C. Then player three has to go first because
Okay.
I'm looking at it and I'm seeing that player 1 has the most points,
Okay. Okay.
but player 2 has the most rebounds. And taking error into consideration,
Okay.
I'm going to give player 2 the edge over player 3. So player 3 has to be the one to go first.
Okay. Okay. Player 3 goes first. So I'm not going to call the names yet.
Okay.
But it's still interesting. It's going to make you laugh when you hear who you eliminated. But you know, who are you going to cut next?
Okay, so just remind me again of player 1's rebounds and assists.
Okay, so player 1, his rebounds were 10,021. Sorry, 11,489, and his assists were 3,651. Player B was 13,099, and his assists were 3,026.
Boy, no, this is tough because again, like I don't necessarily want to penalize player 2,
right,
for era,
right,
because he hasn't really shot any threes, but the rebound numbers now are a lot closer,
right,
between players 1 and player 2. And then the assist numbers are higher for player 1 as well, and the points are also higher.
yeah.
The only thing that player 2 has above player 1 is the rebounds.
Right.
So player 2 would have to be the next one to go. Player 1 would have to be the winner.
Okay.
In this case.
Okay. All right. All right. So you're ready to hear who you eliminated?
Yep. Lay it on me. Let me hear.
Okay. So player C, you eliminated Sir Ernest, Michael Jordan.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay.
You know, and that just shows how, you know, when you're just looking at stats, you know, without context, it shows like, you know, you really cannot rely on it by itself. Player 2, player 1 you eliminated was Dirk Nowitzki.
No, I said player 1 was the winner.
Player 1 was the so you took player 1. Well, you eliminated Shaquille O'Neal.
I had in mind that I had in mind player 2 was Shaq. When he saw 22 3-pointers, I was like, that probably is a Shaq or somebody like that.
That was Shaq. And you know, so you pretty much had Dirk as the winner there. And you know, it's Dirk has a lot of good stats. I mean, when you look at his games, he played quite a lot of games, but also too he put up a lot of buckets. So his points, rebounds, etc. Even though he wasn't scoring later on, he was still picking up some rebounds. So he was able to really get up on that list in terms of the rebounding too. But definitely, you know, Jordan was one of those to go. You know, he had 32,292 points. And, you know, had, I would say, you know, fair enough. Remember, you know, for me, Jordan didn't really play that long, right, compared to some of the other stars. So some of his stats don't really convey his true greatness. But yeah, it's interesting, man.
Yeah, it's like as you said, because Jordan had two retirements in his career,
Absolutely.
and those two retirements could have been considered to be like in the prime of his career.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the fact that his counting numbers are not going to be as high as, let's say,
Yeah.
a LeBron James who
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
around forever and has hardly
Absolutely.
been injured,
Absolutely.
then that you have to take that into consideration.
You
And
do. You do.
Jordan's greatness, his dominance goes outside of the numbers that we were
Yeah.
just looking at.
You definitely cannot slouch. You can't critique Jordan for what he's put on the table, because in that compressed schedule of his, he put together one of the greatest, if not the greatest resume that you can ever put together in the game of basketball. So
Mhm.
he has to be in the conversation for GOAT. Doesn't happen to be mine, but I still loved him as a player, and I refuse to knock him down to put another player up. But I just think from the eye test and the things I've seen,
Mhm.
I just think the most complete player I've seen is LeBron James. I just there's not a better player that I've seen. I don't have to see how many titles you've had. I just look at what's going on the court and what I see. The things that guy's doing, I didn't see Jordan doing. And I compare them both, and I just think one is more complete. It's an opinion that's debatable because we're splitting hairs.
Mhm.
And maybe we shouldn't be comparing them, different eras, different levels of greatness. So,
Yeah.
but they're both great. It's just amazing that we have guys that can still be at that level, still playing today.
Mhm.
So incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely have to appreciate the
Yeah.
era of basketball that we're in right now,
Absolutely.
because there's so many good players all throughout the league.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Almost every team has a player that you can hang
You
your hat on
can,
and say, I'm
yeah.
going to follow this player and
Yeah,
his
yeah,
career.
and that's never been the case before. You
Correct.
haven't had that many. You look at Joel Embiid, you have Jokic, you have all these guys. You have Kevin Durant, you have LeBron James, you have all playing at a high level, all playing at levels where if it's the right night, they can beat each other.
Hmm.
So that's a beautiful thing. So I think you really have to see that the game's evolved, the players and the talent available to the league. They're smiling right now because it's grown. It's
Yep.
grown. So
Hmm.
yeah, in all fairness, maybe we just shouldn't be comparing. We should just be respecting and enjoying the game that we love,
Hmm.
right? So, but yeah, when it comes to the debate, I tend to still get yanked in and try to defend the position. It's fun, but
Hmm.
in the grand scheme of things, I think yeah, we have to respect all these guys at the top. It's amazing.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Agreed. Well, that is a fantastic spot to land this week's episode of the GreenBaje podcast. Hatuey, it was a pleasure indeed for you to join me today on the podcast. Um, as I said before, we will definitely have you back when AJ is here so that we can
absolutely.
go three wide. We may even bring logs back
Yeah,
as
yeah, yeah,
well so that
definitely,
we can
definitely.
go
Chop
four
it up with them
across.
both. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. I agree. Definitely looking forward to that, man. And from my perspective, it was a pleasure, honor being on the show. Love the
Mhm.
podcast, and I wish you guys nothing but growth and the best going forward. You guys are amazing, and definitely looking forward to you joining us on the other side as well to talk some basketball. Okay.
Appreciate it. Now tell the folks where they can find you, what you've got going on before we get out of here.
Absolutely. So you can check out actually two podcasts. So you can check out the Collective Bargaining podcast if you search it up on Facebook. You can find our main group. We like to chop it up with the fans and ask questions, post stats, etc., start debates. So you can definitely find us there by just searching the Collective Bargaining podcast. You can find us on YouTube as well. Also on Twitter, Collective Pod, and also Collective Pod on Instagram. But definitely, if you want to get in and involved with us, search us up on Facebook and let's have a discussion. Also, you can search up the Lifetrap podcast, which is on every platform out there. If you want to hear me talk about life and some of the deeper aspects of the challenges that we as human beings face, join me on that podcast as well. Thank you very much, man. Thank
Yep,
you.
that's beautiful. So, everyone, again, thank you so much for being with us here on the GreenBaje podcast. This week, special guest filling in for the Green, Mr. Hatuey Campbell. And as
Appreciate it.
always, I am the Bidge, and we will see you next time.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Of course.